Have you ever noticed how easy it is for people to hate these days? A careless comment online, a misunderstanding at work, a disagreement over politics, and suddenly walls are built, hearts harden, and we forget that behind every opinion, every face, and every mistake, there's a human being not so different from ourselves. It feels like the world is waging a war we can't see, not fought with guns and tanks, but with words, judgments, and unspoken resentments. And the battlefield, it's everywhere. On our streets, in our homes, across dinner tables, and most insidiously, within our own hearts. We live in an age where hatred has become casual. We disguise it under clever sarcasm, call it righteous anger, or justify it as a defense of what we believe. But at the root, it's the same old poison, one that humanity has carried for centuries. And no matter how advanced our technology becomes, or how connected our world seems, this poison continues to divide, wound, and exhaust us. Look around. Nations tearing themselves apart, communities shattered by suspicion, families breaking down over differences that, just a generation ago, would have been healed with a simple conversation. And yet, in the midst of this rising tide of bitterness, a simple truth, whispered by ancient wisdom, still remains. A truth so profound, so disarmingly simple that most overlook it. Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha spoke these words: "Hatred is never ended by hatred. Hatred is ended by love." Pause for a moment, let those words settle, not by revenge, not by punishment, not even by silence, but by love. It sounds almost impossible, doesn't it? When you've been hurt, betrayed, mocked, or misunderstood, the last thing you want is to meet it with love. And yet, deep down, some part of you knows. You've seen it. In the rare moments when someone forgives what seems unforgivable. When a stranger shows kindness in the face of cruelty. When love, unexpectedly, breaks a chain of anger and turns an enemy into a friend. These moments are rare not because love is weak, but because we've been conditioned to believe that hatred somehow keeps us safe. That to hate is to stay strong. To hate is to protect what's ours. To hate is to win. But what if it's not strength at all? What if it's the most exhausting, self-destructive force we carry? What if hatred doesn't shield us, but slowly corrodes our peace, poisons our relationships, and shackles us to an endless cycle of suffering? Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Hatred always costs more than it gives. It burns through our energy, taints our memories, and stains every new connection we try to build. It convinces us we're alone, separate, and justified in our anger. And in the end, it leaves us empty. The Buddha wasn't a philosopher in an ivory tower. He saw the human heart up close. He walked among kings, beggars, murderers, and outcasts. He knew what hatred did to a person, not just to their victim, but to themselves. Because hatred doesn't stay in one place. It festers. It spills over. And before you know it, a single grudge becomes 1,000. A moment of anger turns into years of coldness. A harsh word to a stranger spirals into a habit of cruelty. And the saddest part, most people don't even realize it's happening. They mistake the emptiness inside for strength. They mistake bitterness for wisdom. But deep down, in the quiet hours when no one is watching, they feel it. That aching loneliness. That heaviness in the chest. That nagging question. Is this really who I've become? This isn't a lecture, it's a reminder. Because whether we admit it or not, every one of us carries a little hatred, sometimes toward others, sometimes toward ourselves. And every day we get to choose what we'll feed, the fire or the light. Compassion isn't just a virtue for saints and monks, it's a survival skill. It's the medicine for a world so sick with anger that it forgets how to heal itself. But here's the catch. It's not easy. It's not natural. It takes courage to break the chain, To be the one who refuses to mirror hate back to the world. To stand firm and say, "Not here, not through me." You don't have to forgive everything. You don't have to befriend your enemies, but you can choose to stop carrying them around in your heart. You can choose to interrupt the cycle. And maybe, just maybe, in doing so, you set someone else free too. This is what we're here to explore. Not abstract philosophy, but living wisdom. Not impossible ideals, but small, powerful shifts in how we meet the world and ourselves. Because no one's ever hated their way into peace. No one has ever healed a wound by deepening it. And the path to a gentler world begins, as it always has, within. So let's begin. Let's peel back the layers of this ancient wisdom, see why hatred fails, and how compassion isn't weakness, but the fiercest strength we'll ever know. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting for you to choose love over anger. And somewhere deep within, so are you. It's strange, isn't it? How we cling to hatred as if it's some kind of shield, as if by holding onto it tightly enough, we can somehow protect ourselves from pain. But the truth is, hatred doesn't protect us. It traps us. And it does it so quietly, so convincingly, that most of us never even see the cage we've built around ourselves. Think about it. Every time you get angry, every time resentment simmers in your chest, every time you replay an old betrayal in your mind, who suffers more? Is it the person you're angry at? Or is it you? You see, hatred is clever. It whispers in your ear, promising strength. It says, if you stay angry, you'll never be hurt again. It says, if you hate them, they'll never have power over you. It tells you to harden your heart, to close your doors, to build your walls. And for a little while it works. You feel powerful, untouchable, cold and safe. But then something else happens. The walls get higher. The heart grows heavier. And instead of keeping pain out, you find yourself imprisoned with it. Because here's the paradox no one wants to admit. Hatred hurts the hater more than the hated. The Buddha saw this clearly. He described hatred as a kind of fire. One that first burns the hand that holds it before it reaches anyone else. And isn't that exactly what happens? We carry around grudges that weigh us down, replaying old insults like broken records. We avoid people, places, and memories that once made us happy, all because of one moment, one wound we refuse to let go. We tell ourselves we're punishing them, but all we're doing is punishing ourselves. This is the cycle of suffering. Dukkha, as it's called in ancient Pali. A pattern of craving, clinging, and aversion that turns life's natural discomforts into relentless torment. You get hurt. You react with hatred. That hatred breeds more hatred. You suffer. You cling to the suffering. And the wheel turns again. Round and round it spins, generation after generation, inside families, across nations, within ourselves. Someone strikes you with a word and you strike back. Someone wrongs you and you plot revenge. You think, I'll show them. But when you finally do, what happens? Is your heart lighter? Are you free? Or does a new wound open where the old one was? Is the peace you sought still out of reach? This is why hatred always fails. Not because it isn't powerful, but because it's self-defeating. Imagine drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die. That's what hatred does. It eats away at you from the inside, distorting your thoughts, clouding your judgment, severing your connection to the world around you. And the longer you feed it, the more it consumes. History is littered with proof. Wars fought over ancient grudges, families torn apart over old betrayals, friendships shattered over words long forgotten by one but still clutched like daggers by the other. And what's left in the end? Ashes. Regret. Generations of pain no one remembers the reason for. But hatred isn't just a social problem. It's personal. It shapes the way you wake up in the morning, how you speak to your loved ones, how you treat strangers, how you see yourself in the mirror. It affects your health, your sleep, your peace of mind. It turns ordinary days into battlegrounds. And without realizing it, you start to live in a world you created, a world filled with enemies, threats, and imagined insults. The Buddha taught that this cycle isn't inevitable, that it can be broken, but only by seeing it for what it is. Hatred pretends to be a weapon, but it's a chain. It pretends to give you control, but it controls you. It pretends to be justice, but it's just another form of suffering. And the most tragic part, it's entirely optional. You don't have to keep drinking that poison. You don't have to carry old grudges like treasures. You don't have to rehearse your anger in the quiet moments of your day. You can lay it down, not because the world deserves your forgiveness, but because you deserve your own peace. This isn't weakness. This isn't surrender. It's the boldest act a human being can make. To choose freedom over fury, to step out of a cycle that's devoured so many lives before yours. And yes, it takes practice. It takes clarity. It takes a heart willing to unlearn everything it's been taught about strength. But the moment you see hatred for what it truly is, a trick, a thief, a liar, that's the moment you take your first real breath in years. You realize you don't have to play this game. You can step aside, you can rise above, and in that space something else begins to grow, something quieter but infinitely more powerful, compassion, not as a passive, naive sentiment, but as a fierce, unshakable force, the kind that doesn't mirror hatred but dissolves it, the kind that ends cycles instead of repeating them, because when one person refuses to hate, a chain breaks. And when enough chains break, whole worlds can change. The question is, are you willing to be that person? If hatred is a fire, then the Buddha was the man who refused to add another log to the flame. In a world drowning in bitterness, vengeance, and endless cycles of revenge, he stood like a mountain, unmoving, unyielding, unharmed. But let's not romanticize this. The Buddha wasn't born serene. He wasn't immune to pain, insult, or betrayal. Before he became the awakened one, he was a man, a prince, a husband, a father, a friend. He knew what it meant to lose. He knew the sting of harsh words, the ache of separation, the emptiness of unmet longing. And yet, when hatred came for him, and it did, he faced it in a way that still echoes through history. There's a story, one of my favorites from the ancient texts. A man named Devadatta, the Buddha's own cousin, was consumed by jealousy. Devadatta couldn't stand the Buddha's growing influence, his peace, his unshakable grace. So like all who burn with envy, he plotted. One day, as the Buddha walked quietly along a forest path, Devadatta rolled a massive boulder down the hill, aiming to crush him. But here's what happened next. The boulder missed. It struck a rock beside the path, shattering into fragments. One sharp shard grazed the Buddha's foot, drawing blood. The disciples were horrified. Some wept. Some trembled with rage. "Let us punish him," they cried. "Let us repay this evil with justice." But the Buddha, he simply looked down at his wound, then to his followers and said quietly, "Hatred is never ended by hatred. It is ended by love. This is an eternal truth." That moment wasn't just a line in a scripture. It was a living demonstration of what it means to be free, to choose clarity over chaos, compassion over compulsion. And the beauty is, this wasn't a one-time display of virtue. Throughout his life, the Buddha was insulted, mocked, threatened. Bandits, kings, bitter rivals, they tested him. Once, a man hurled vicious words at the Buddha in public, insults sharp enough to cut through bone. When he finished, the Buddha asked him calmly, "If someone offers you a gift but you do not accept it, to whom does it belong?" The man, confused, answered, "It belongs to the one who offered it." And the Buddha smiled. "Then so it is with your anger. I do not accept it. Just imagine that. Imagine having such command over your own mind that even someone else's rage can't stick to you. That you could see anger for what it is, a desperate offering of suffering, and simply choose not to pick it up. The ancient texts are filled with stories like this, each one a reminder that we're not powerless against hatred, that the cycle can stop with us, but it takes a warrior's strength, not the kind that flexes fists or sharpens words, but the strength to stay soft in a hard world, to stay kind in a cruel one. And it wasn't just the Buddha who lived this way. His disciples learned it too. There was Angulimala, a fearsome bandit, a murderer, a man with blood on his hands. He terrorized entire villages, wore a necklace of his victims' fingers around his neck. When Angulimala set out to kill the Buddha, thinking him just another victim, something strange happened. No matter how fast Angulimala ran, the Buddha always stayed ahead, calmly, peacefully walking. Panting, exhausted, the bandit shouted, "Stop, holy man!" And the Buddha turned and replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who must stop." That one sentence shattered Angulimala's world. In that moment, the murderer saw the madness of his life. He laid down his sword. He became a monk, and in time, a saint. Why does this matter to us now in our modern lives with our neon lights and endless notifications? Because hatred hasn't changed. Its faces are different, its weapons updated, but its nature is the same. And so is the way to defeat it. The Buddha taught us through his life, not just his words, that hatred can only be dissolved by a mind clear enough to see it for what it is. A storm, temporary, destructive, and powerless against a steady heart. We don't need to be saints to practice this. We don't need to shave our heads, renounce the world, or sit cross-legged in caves. We just need to remember that when someone hurls their anger at us, it's a gift we don't have to accept. When we're tempted to retaliate, we can pause. We can choose a different path, not because it's easy, but because it's free. And in that space between reaction and response, between impulse and intention, a different world is possible. One where hatred burns itself out for lack of fuel, where kindness isn't weakness but wisdom, where each of us holds the power to break a 1,000-year chain. It's the wisdom of the ancients, and it's waiting for us right here, right now. If hatred is a poison we willingly drink, then compassion is the medicine we keep forgetting we have. For centuries, sages, monks, and mystics spoke of kindness as if it were some secret superpower. And now, science is finally catching up. Modern neuroscience, for all its high-tech brain scans and clinical studies, has started confirming what the Buddha taught under a Bodhi tree 2,600 years ago. Kindness isn't just good for your soul. It rewires your brain. It heals your body. It transforms your reality. Let's break this down. When you perform an act of genuine compassion, whether it's offering a warm smile, forgiving an old wound, or quietly wishing someone well, your brain lights up in remarkable ways. Regions like the ventral striatum, the prefrontal cortex, and the insula activate. These areas are associated with joy, connection, and emotional regulation. Your body releases oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone, a chemical that fosters trust, lowers blood pressure, and eases anxiety. In one famous study, participants were asked to practice metta, or loving-kindness meditation, where they silently wished well for others. After just a few weeks, their brains showed increased activity in the regions linked to empathy and positive emotion. They reported less anger, less fear, and a stronger sense of connection with people, even strangers. But here's the beautiful paradox. The person who benefits most from your compassion is you. Anger, on the other hand, is like swallowing hot coals and hoping the other person burns. It spikes your cortisol, the stress hormone, flooding your system with chemicals that tighten arteries, raise blood pressure, and weaken your immune response. Even brief moments of rage leave marks on your cardiovascular system. Chronic hatred. It's a fast track to heart disease, depression, and a bitter, isolated life. But kindness, even in tiny, fleeting doses, heals. Compassion lowers cortisol levels. It slows your heartbeat. It increases activity in the vagus nerve, which helps regulate emotional balance and deepens your sense of safety in the world. And beyond biology, it changes how you see reality. Hatred narrows your vision. It turns the world into a battlefield. Everyone becomes a threat. Every glance a potential insult. Every silence a provocation. Compassion widens the lens. Suddenly, you see that the person who cut you off in traffic isn't your enemy. He's a man rushing to visit his sick mother. The rude cashier isn't a monster. She's a girl drowning in grief you'll never see. And even your own anger starts to look different. You realize it's not you. It's a wave passing through. You can watch it, let it rise, let it fall, without losing yourself in its storm. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." If you rehearse hatred, you become hate. If you rehearse compassion, you become peace. And here's the wild part, it's addictive. Acts of kindness release dopamine, the brain's natural reward chemical. The more you give, the more you want to give. It creates a feedback loop, which is why ancient teachers didn't just talk about compassion in sermons. They trained it like a muscle. Daily, deliberately, in small, almost invisible ways. Not because it makes you a saint, but because it makes you sane. In one study, researchers asked people to perform 5 small acts of kindness in a single day, things like complimenting a stranger, helping someone carry groceries, or sending a kind message. The results: levels of happiness, life satisfaction, and self-worth skyrocketed, stress and loneliness dropped, and the effects lasted for weeks. This is science confirming what monks in saffron robes knew all along. Compassion isn't sentimental, it's practical. It's how you survive your own mind. Because let's be honest, most of our suffering isn't caused by what happens to us. It's caused by the stories we tell ourselves about what happens. Compassion rewrites those stories. It reminds you that every person you meet is fighting a battle you can't see. That most cruelty is clumsy self-protection. That even your own anger is a misguided cry for peace. And every time you choose kindness over contempt, you're not just being noble, you're repairing your own mind. You're softening the places hardened by disappointment. You're dissolving the bitterness you didn't even know you carried. The Buddha wasn't offering empty philosophy when he said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but by love." He was handing us a tool, a map out of our own suffering. And the best part, you don't need to wait for perfect conditions. You can start right now, in the next breath, the next conversation, the next harsh thought. Kindness is always within reach, and the more you use it, the more it uses you. The storm quiets, the heart steadies, and what once seemed unbearable starts to soften. This isn't just a spiritual ideal, it's a neurological fact. And in a world still addicted to outrage, still seduced by revenge, still drowning in its own bitterness, that kind of quiet courage is nothing short of revolutionary. It's easy to talk about compassion when the world feels calm. When people smile, the sun's out, and everything goes your way. But the true test of a heart lies in the unguarded moments. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a stranger snaps at you, when life without warning throws a storm at your door. This is where compassion matters most, and strangely, where it's most powerful. The ancient texts tell grand stories of sages offering wisdom to kings, of monks embracing those who wronged them. But you don't need a robe or a title to practice this art. You just need to start exactly where you are, Because here's the truth no one tells you. Compassion doesn't have to be dramatic to be life-changing. In fact, it's the tiny, almost invisible acts that quietly reshape the world. Holding a door for someone with tired eyes. Letting a frustrated mother go ahead of you in line. Sending a message to a friend you haven't spoken to in months just to say, "I'm thinking of you." These gestures might seem small, but to a weary soul they can feel like lifelines. A reminder that in a world that often forgets, someone still cares. And here's what's wild. Each time you extend that kindness, you don't just lift them, you lift yourself. It's like a ripple on water. One act spreads outward. The person you comfort today might pass that warmth to someone else tomorrow. And suddenly, without realizing it, you've started a quiet revolution. The Buddha called this metta, or loving kindness. A deep, unconditional goodwill for all beings, even those who seem unworthy of it. Especially those, because anyone can be kind to the lovable. It takes courage to be kind to the difficult, to the rude, the angry, the indifferent, to the people the world tells you to write off. But when you do, something shifts. You realize they were never the enemy. They were mirrors reflecting the places in yourself still aching for peace. So how do you begin? Start small. When irritation rises, pause. Instead of reacting, breathe. Say silently, "May you be free from your suffering." You don't have to mean it perfectly. You just have to plant the seed. Smile at a stranger. Compliment someone's effort, not just their appearance. Listen, truly listen when someone speaks. And perhaps the simplest, most overlooked kindness of all, be gentle with yourself. We are, most of us, far harsher to ourselves than we would ever be to a friend. Carrying old regrets, replaying every mistake, measuring our worth against impossible standards. But compassion isn't just about others. It begins within. The Buddha often spoke of this balance. That to offer love to the world while starving yourself of it is like trying to fill a river with an empty cup. So forgive your flaws, speak to yourself as you would to a frightened child. Rest when you're tired, laugh when you can, and remember, every act of kindness toward yourself makes it easier to offer it to others. And when the big moments come, and they will, when someone betrays you, when words cut deep, when injustice flares, you'll find you've built a quiet strength, a steady kindness not born of weakness, but of deep, unshakable understanding. Because here's the secret. Compassion isn't naive. It isn't about letting people walk over you or pretending harm doesn't hurt. It's about seeing clearly, recognizing that those who wound you are often wounded themselves. That hatred passed down is not an inheritance you have to carry, that you can choose to end the cycle with one act, one word, one breath. And what's more, you'll notice that the more you practice these simple daily gestures, the more your perception of the world changes. The man shouting in traffic becomes a person in pain. The cold stranger on the train becomes a story you'll never fully know. And your own anger, once an uninvited guest, becomes easier to greet, understand, and gently release. This is how compassion works. Not in grand speeches or perfect moments, but in the ordinary, overlooked spaces of our daily lives. And over time, those small acts accumulate. They become habits, then character, then legacy. As the Dhammapada reminds us, drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise person, gathering it little by little, fills themselves with good. So don't underestimate your one kind word, your quiet patience, your unnoticed mercy. They might just be the drop that tips someone else's world back toward hope. And in doing so, they tip yours. Sometimes it's easy to believe that ancient wisdom belongs to ancient times, that the stories of forgiveness, of boundless compassion, are relics of a simpler world. But the truth is, the greatest acts of compassion are happening right here, right now. In neighborhoods like yours, in lives you'd never expect. And these modern stories, they remind us what's possible when the heart lets go of hatred. There's a man named Azam. Years ago, his teenage son was shot and killed during a robbery. The boy who pulled the trigger was just 16. Most would have wanted revenge, to curse the name of the one who stole their child. But Azam chose a different path. He reached out to the boy's family. He spoke to schools, prisons, anyone who'd listen about forgiveness. And then, when the boy was sentenced to life, Azam visited him in prison, not to condemn, but to understand. In time, a bond formed. A father who lost a son and a boy who took a life. Bound by tragedy, redeemed by compassion. Azam said, "When I forgave him, I freed myself." And there it is, the unspoken truth about hatred. It chains us to the moment of our pain, while compassion, even for the one who hurt us, breaks those chains. Or take the story of Mary Johnson. Her only son was murdered by a young man named Oshie. For years, her grief was so heavy it suffocated everything else. Until, one day, she did the unimaginable. She met Oshie in prison. What was supposed to be a brief, formal meeting turned into a long, tear-filled conversation. And over the months that followed, something unexpected happened. Mary and Oshie became family. When he was finally released, she helped him find a home next door to hers. Today, they speak together about loss, forgiveness, and the wild, unstoppable grace of the human heart. It's easy to dismiss these stories as extraordinary, as if they belong to saints or sages. But every person who chose compassion over hatred stood at the same crossroads we all face every day. A cruel word, a broken promise, a betrayal too deep for words. In those moments, the old instinct rises to harden, to strike back, to wish pain upon the one who hurt you. And yet, within us lives another voice, quieter, gentler, but steady, the one that whispers, "You can choose peace." And when you listen, even once, you realize something incredible. Compassion isn't about erasing what happened. It's about refusing to let it poison you. Modern science backs this up. Studies show that people who actively practice forgiveness and compassion have lower blood pressure, reduced stress, better sleep, even stronger immune systems. Their brains literally rewire for resilience. Because when you release the burden of hatred, you make room for something far greater, the freedom to live fully without bitterness shadowing your days. And this isn't just about the big, headline-making acts. It's about the quiet, daily decisions. The father who stops yelling and starts listening. The neighbor who lets an old grudge die. The woman who, after years of silence, sends a simple text, "I'm sorry." These are revolutions in miniature. They don't make the news, but they remake lives. The Dalai Lama once said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." It's not a trick, it's a path. One as ancient as the mountains and as new as this very moment. Because every time someone chooses kindness where hatred could have bloomed, the world tilts a little closer to healing. And perhaps, most beautiful of all, compassion is contagious. One act inspires another. One life transformed ripples outward in ways we'll never fully see. A stranger's smile might soften a heart on the verge of breaking. A hand offered in forgiveness might stop a cycle of violence generations deep. And your smallest kindness today might be the thread that holds someone else together tomorrow. This is how hatred ends, not with grand declarations, but with ordinary people choosing, again and again, to be something better. And you, whether you believe it yet or not, are capable of that same power. It lives in your hands, in your words, in your silences. And when you begin to wield it, the world changes, not all at once, but enough. Enough for one more heart to heal, enough for one more day to hold hope. And as those ripples spread, a new world quietly begins to rise. And so here we are, at the end of this journey, but perhaps it's not really an ending. Maybe it's the quiet beginning of something far more important. You've heard the stories of ancient sages and modern souls, of impossible forgiveness and unexpected kindness, of the invisible war raging in hearts and the silent revolutions that have already begun. And now, the question lingers, what about you? It's easy, isn't it, to let life pull us into its noise. The deadlines, the scrolling screens, the small irritations that stack up like stones in your chest. And before you know it, your days become a blur and your heart a little harder than you meant it to be. But the truth is, you don't have to wait for perfect conditions to practice compassion. You don't need to be a monk on a mountain or a saint with a flawless past. You just need this moment, right here, right now. Because every day gives you 100 chances to be the reason someone believes in gentleness again. A kind word when it's least expected. A silent prayer for someone you'll never meet. The courage to forgive even if it's only inside your own heart. These aren't small things. They're everything. You see, hatred is loud. It shouts in headlines, it blares through angry voices, it festers in cold silences. But love, true, quiet, steady love, it moves differently. It sits beside the lonely. It holds the hand of the grieving. It listens without needing to speak. And though it rarely makes the news, it is what saves us, over and over again. The Buddha taught that hatred is never ended by hatred. It is only ended by love, not the grand, cinematic kind, but the daily, ordinary, imperfect kind that you are fully capable of giving. You, the person watching this right now, with your flaws and regrets and hopes and wounds. You don't have to be anything more than who you are to begin. You just have to decide. Decide to be softer where the world grows harsh. Decide to offer peace where anger would be easier. Decide to love not because it's deserved, but because it's needed. And if you're thinking, but what difference can one person make? Remember this, every wildfire begins with a spark. Every river starts with a single drop. Every great awakening is born in a quiet moment when someone somewhere chooses to live differently. That someone could be you. So as this video ends and you return to your world with its unwashed dishes and unanswered messages, carry this with you. You are powerful, not because of your wealth or your followers or your titles, but because you can choose in every moment to be a force for healing in a world aching to be whole. So be the hand that steadies, be the voice that soothes, be the love that lingers long after the moment has passed. This isn't just philosophy, it's survival. It's how we outlive our anger, how we outshine our bitterness, how we remember what it means to be human. The world doesn't need another opinion. It needs compassion and action. It needs you. Right here, right now, let's be the love together.